the same man who gave the order to kill these people, risked everything to save them. His name was Werner Hartenstein, and what he did next was so extraordinary. His own government would make it illegal. This is the untold story of the most controversial rescue mission of World War II, when a Nazi U-boat commander defied military orders to save over 1,000 Allied lives. September 12, 1942. U-boat ace Werner Hartenstein had just scored his biggest victory yet, sinking the 20,000-ton British troopship Laconia with a single torpedo. But as survivors filled the water, he made a decision that defied everything the war had become. Instead of continuing his patrol, Hartenstein surfaced his submarine directly among his enemies and began pulling survivors aboard. This extraordinary act of humanity would trigger a chain of events so controversial that both sides would attempt to bury the story for decades. The RMS Laconia began her life as a luxury passenger liner in the 1920s, carrying wealthy travelers between England and the colonies. But like so many civilian vessels, war transformed her into something else entirely, a troop ship carrying soldiers, supplies, and prisoners. By September 1942, the Battle of the Atlantic was at its height. U-boats were sinking Allied ships faster than they could be built. For the men who sailed these waters, survival odds were growing slimmer by the day. On September 1st, the Laconia departed Cape Town, South Africa, bound for England. Her human cargo made her a prime military target. Hundreds of British troops returning home, Italian prisoners captured in the North African campaign, Polish soldiers serving as guards, and civilian passengers, including women and children. What few aboard realized was that the Italians, prisoners from Rommel's Africa Corps, were technically allied with the very U-boats hunting in these waters. Italy and Germany were Axis partners, though by late 1942, this alliance was beginning to fray. It was a detail that would soon prove crucial. Meanwhile, beneath the waves, Korvettenkapitän Werner Hartenstein commanded U-156, one of Germany's fearsome Type 9 long-range submarines. At 36 years old, Hartenstein was already a decorated veteran, with 19 confirmed kills totaling over 97,000 tons. An ace by any standard. Have you ever wondered what it was like inside these underwater killers? German submariners lived in almost inconceivable conditions, cramped metal tubes reeking of diesel, sweat, and fear. They called themselves the Grey Wolves, and by 1942, they were the terror of the Atlantic. At 8:07 p.m. on September 12th, U-156 spotted a large vessel sailing alone, a submarine commander's dream target. Through his periscope, Hartenstein identified the distinctive profile of a passenger liner converted for military use. The order was given: "Loss! Fire!" A single G7A torpedo carrying 617 pounds of high explosive shot from Tube 1. For 37 seconds, death streaked through the black Atlantic waters. What happened next would be recorded in the U-boat's war diary, a document that survived to tell this extraordinary tale. At 8:10 p.m., the torpedo struck the Laconia's starboard side near hold, number 2, where many of the Italian prisoners were confined. The explosion was catastrophic, killing hundreds instantly. Within minutes, the 20,000-ton vessel began listing heavily. Panic erupted aboard the doomed ship. As water flooded the lower decks, Italian prisoners who survived the initial blast fought desperately to escape their flooding compartments. The official manifest listed 26 lifeboats, enough for all souls aboard, but the severe list made launching many of them impossible. For the Laconia's captain Rudolf Sharp, the scene was a commander's worst nightmare. With his ship mortally wounded and thousands of lives at stake, he ordered his crew to prioritize the evacuation of women and children. but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Witness accounts from survivors later described Polish guards firing on Italian prisoners attempting to board already overcrowded lifeboats. Whether this was to maintain order or out of panic remains disputed. What's certain is that hundreds of Italians found themselves trapped aboard the sinking vessel. As was standard procedure, U-156 surfaced to record its kill and gather intelligence. But what Hartenstein saw in his submarine searchlight beam stopped him cold. The ocean was literally filled with people, hundreds of survivors crying for help in English and, surprisingly, in Italian. The magnificent kill Hartenstein had just recorded suddenly revealed itself to be something far more complex. In this moment, Werner Hartenstein faced an impossible choice that would define the rest of his life. According to strict orders, he should have disappeared beneath the waves, continuing his patrol and leaving the survivors to their fate. Instead, he did something unprecedented in submarine warfare. Hartenstein ordered an open-frequency message to be broadcast in plain English. If any ship will assist the shipwrecked Laconia crew, I will not attack her, providing I am not being attacked by ship or air force. I picked up 193 men, 4 degrees, 52 minutes south, 11 degrees, 26 minutes west. German submarine. U-156 hoisted a Red Cross flag and began pulling survivors from the water, enemies and allies alike. The submarine quickly became dangerously overcrowded with over 200 people on deck and another 200 in lifeboats being towed behind. What had begun as a routine attack had transformed into the largest submarine rescue operation in history. The scene aboard U-156 defied imagination. British officers standing alongside the German captain who had just tried to kill them. Civilian women and children receiving medical care from submarine crewmen. Italian prisoners, technically Germany's allies, being rescued alongside their British captors. One British survivor would later recall, "I couldn't believe it. These men had just tried to kill us. Now they were sharing their rations and treating our wounded. One German sailor even gave up his bunk for a pregnant woman." Hartenstein's distress call reached German Naval Command, where it created a dilemma for Admiral Karl Dönitz. After consultation with Hitler, Dönitz ordered other nearby U-boats to assist, U-506, U-507, and the Italian submarine Capellini. He also arranged for Vichy French warships to rendezvous with the submarines and take on survivors. For the next 4 days, an extraordinary scene unfolded in the mid-Atlantic. German and Italian submarines, the predators of Allied shipping, openly conducting a massive humanitarian rescue mission, coordinating with Vichy French ships to save the very people they had been ordered to kill. But this astonishing moment of humanity amid total war was about to be shattered. On September 16th, an American B-24 Liberator bomber from Ascension Island spotted U-156 on the surface. Despite the Red Cross flag clearly visible and survivors crowded on deck, the bomber began an attack run. Had commanders not received the message about the rescue, or had they dismissed it as a ruse? What happened next remains controversial to this day. According to survivors, the American plane dropped depth charges despite clear evidence of a rescue operation underway. The official US position would later claim they believed the Red Cross flag was a deception tactic. Hartenstein had no choice. With his submarine under attack, he ordered all survivors off the deck and cut loose the towed lifeboats. The submarine dove for safety, leaving behind the very people he had spent days trying to save. The attack killed many of the survivors who had just been rescued. The other U-boats, fearing similar attacks, were also forced to submerge, though they managed to radio the positions of survivors to approaching Vichy French warships. French warships Gloire, Annamite and Dumont d'Urville eventually rescued 1,113 survivors. But the final toll was devastating. 1,619 people perished, the vast majority being Italian prisoners of war who never made it off the ship or drowned when the submarines were forced to abandon them. The reaction from German High Command was swift and would change submarine warfare forever. On September 17th, Admiral Karl Dönitz issued an order that would become infamous at the Nuremberg trials, the Laconia Order. No attempt of any kind must be made at rescuing members of ships sunk. Rescue runs counter to the rudimentary demands of warfare for the destruction of enemy ships and crews. Be harsh, having in mind that the enemy takes no regard of women and children in his bombing attacks on German cities. With a single order, the brief moment of humanity shown by Hartenstein was officially forbidden. From this point forward, German submarines would make no attempts to rescue survivors. Even the provision of food, water, or coordinates to the nearest land was prohibited. Werner Hartenstein continued commanding U-156 after the incident. Did he regret his decision to attempt the rescue? We'll never know. He left no memoir, gave no interview. His only record is the terse, factual log entries of his submarine's war diary. On March 8, 1943, less than 6 months after the Laconia incident, U-156 was attacked and sunk by a US Navy aircraft east of Barbados. Hartenstein and his entire crew perished, 53 men who had once set aside the rules of war to save their enemies. After the war, at the Nuremberg trials, Allied prosecutors attempted to use the Laconia Order as evidence to convict Admiral Dönitz of war crimes. Their strategy backfired spectacularly. When American Admiral Chester Nimitz testified that American submarines in the Pacific followed essentially the same policy of not rescuing survivors, the tribunal decided it could not convict Dönitz on this count. The uncomfortable truth was that all sides had prioritized military necessity over humanitarian concerns. For decades after the war, the Laconia incident remained obscure, an uncomfortable story that neither side was eager to tell. But for the survivors, the memory of those extraordinary days when enemies became rescuers never faded. Today, U-156 lies in the deep Atlantic off Barbados, a silent monument to Werner Hartenstein and his men. The wreck was discovered in 2003, 6 decades after it sank with all hands. What makes the Laconia incident so compelling is not just the dramatic rescue and its tragic conclusion, but the profound questions it raises about our shared humanity. In the midst of history's most destructive war, a German U-boat commander chose, for a brief moment, to see his enemies as human beings deserving of mercy. If you found this story interesting, like and subscribe for more. Till next time.